All right, welcome everyone for this latest deep dive discussion, which is an ongoing series of exactly what it says on the tin. Deep dive discussions into various topics, projects, issues facing the European XR ecosystem, whether that be in industry and research and creation. Um, and we may have a little bit of feedback. I'm not sure if that's on Oliver's side. So we may just mute the microphones and then we'll go back and forth when people are presenting. But so this one is about the XR4Human Experience Library. So it's an exciting project, and I'm very keen to talk about it, not only because I play myself as XR for Europe a small role in it, but because it's potentially a very valuable contribution to solving this fundamental question that faces people who create in with extended reality technologies is how to make it accessible and available, how to be discoverable by people who you may never meet, but what you've made is just particularly valuable for them. So in a nutshell, let me just break into who we have with us today. We have Oliver Schreer at the Fraunhofer Heinrich Hertz Institute. We have Faisal Mushtaq of the University of Leeds, the Center for Immersive Technologies, and these are the two leaders of Work Package 6, which is inside the XR4Human Project. The XR4Human Project is a 3-year EU-funded project. Its mission is to co-create living guidance documents and ethical and related policy, regulatory, governance, and interoperability issues of XR technologies. And it's aiming to build public trust and acceptance. It's one of a handful of projects that the European Union is funding in order to exactly do this, to increase the acceptance, the comfort, and to ensure that increasingly the XR industry on the side of development, hardware and software, is reflecting of European values, human-centered and ethical values. So our two speakers today are, as I mentioned, leading Work Package 6. There are a handful of work packages in XR4Human, and we might revisit some other work packages here in the coming months, as XR4Human is entering the second half of its 3-year mandate. But in Work Package 6, the focus is on demonstration and validation, and aims to record and demonstrate the practical application of an XR code of conduct through demonstrating and showcasing kind of good practices and failure cases. So that's what this experience library aims to do. It's going to be an online repository of test cases to allow developers to demonstrate evidence that they are adhering to best practices, or at least aspiring, toward best practices. And in order to do this, the experience library was achieved by an expert survey and an in-depth Delphi study that was performed in the last 12 months. And this is one of the major achievements of the XR4Human project, this experience library. So without further ado, I would like to turn now over the stage to Faisal and Oliver to talk more about the project and maybe present and demonstrate something about the experience library. Sorry.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, that's great. So I think you set the scene very well for XR4Human. So let me share my my slides now. Just bear with me for a moment. Hopefully you can all see what I can see. Okay, right. So yeah, summary of the sort of project, sort of Michael alluded to. This is a European Union funded project. Brings together academia, industry, as well as consumers and regulators to generate European standards. So the idea is to try and accelerate the ethical and human-centered development of XR technologies so that we can all, wherever we are, whatever walk of life we come from, benefit from this potentially society-transforming platform that we have in front of us. So I wanted to just flag up some of the work that we've done in Work Package 6 to date, which I think is really sort of fascinating. I think sort of also demonstrates the need for such work. So what you're looking at here are some data that we collected in Work Package 6, where we asked experts, we got together a bunch of experts who work with XR on a daily basis, and we said, okay, how acceptable, or how accessible, I should say, are these technologies for a range of different sort of demographic profiles? So of course, some of this was necessarily sort of crude. We just said, okay, well, here's a characteristic. how accessible is this sort of technology. And what you'll see here on this plot is you'll see a sort of an order of how accessible this is for various different groups. So unsurprising for many of you, I'm sure, you'll see that here on the right-hand side, in this sort of pink here, on the right to the rightmost element of this sort of figure, you have young adults, where we see the rating of extremely, very accessible. Okay, so young adults in general, these technologies are very accessible. Let's go all the way to the left-hand side, and let's go to vision loss. So if you have visual impairments, then actually current XR technologies are very inaccessible for you. And then you have this really interesting sort of spectrum right here in the middle. You span from depth perception, if you have low digital literacy, cognitive impairments. Older adults happen to fall here in the middle to somewhat inaccessible. This is all extremely sort of interesting, revealing data about the state of play of XR technologies today. And our goal as a sort of project and as part of a sort of a wider work that we all do in this sort of network is try and push the left-hand side of this sort of plot up, try and increase these technologies for groups for whom XR is not accessible, or they're excluded in some ways from making use of these technologies. And one element, one way that we're doing this is by recording and demonstrating sort of the XR sort of best practices. So, excuse me, so good practices, failure cases, where does XR work well, where does it not work well? And one element of that is to demonstrate, is to create an online sort of resource, a repository where we can showcase best practices and sort of others can then sort of be inspired and sort of hopefully follow on and make use of those in their own sort of work. So that's why we are launching the XR4Human Experiences Library today with the goal of improving accessibility of XR in the long run. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to hand over to Oliver, who will be able to give you a visual sort of walkthrough of the sort of platform. And let me see if I can stop sharing there. And so hand over to Oliver, who will be able to talk you through the library, what it looks like online, and then sort of go through a sort of completed sort of submission. So over to you, Oliver.
I'm just sharing my screen. So as you can see in a second, this is the main page of our XR4Human Experience Library. So we invite the community to submit their experiences, which must be non-commercial experiences. And we invite the community to submit those experiences and make them available to the community to show best practices in XR. This library has already some elements, some applications available, which are basically provided by partners from the XR4Human project. So here are already some examples, and if we so the community is invited to submit their experiences and best practices to this platform, and if we would have a huge amount of contributions available, you can then use these filters and check, for example, for different technology and so, for example, volumetric recording, and then you will see immediately the applications which fit to these criteria. And can also search for other aspects like the headset, the device, the hardware, and so on. Can search for multi-user, single-user experiences. So, and if you have done so far and choose your experience, then, for example, we can watch an example. And if you go to this example, you see all the details, the developers, the institution or the company, some short description, some contact details. You can watch a teaser video and get information how to access to this experience, and some further technical description and project details. So you will find everything what you need to get to know about this experience. We have to make clear at this point that this library does not does only offer links to the submitters of these experiences. So you will get information where and how to access the experience. But we, in this project, in XR4Human, we will not host the applications itself. So this is in full responsibility of the submitters. So, so if you find this platform interesting and you have some XR experience in mind which you want to offer to the community, you may select the submit button, and then you will arrive on a landing page, a Qualtrics form, where you can input all the necessary information about your application. And I will not go through the submission form itself, but many aspects are requested, many information is requested, so that the hosts of this experience library, which are members of the XR4Human project at the moment, are able to evaluate the experience and to decide if this experience will be included in this library. So first of all, the experience must be non-commercial, and it must fulfill the ethical and legal requirements. So it shouldn't be any harassive content and so on and so forth. So after an internal review process, we will then inform the submittant and either put this experience on the library or not. So this is a chance for all the research labs and institutions or companies, developers, to offer their products, their experiences to the wider community and to share their best practices. We are looking forward to receive your submissions and to make this experience library a nice and helpful instrument for the community to distribute novel and interesting XR experiences.
Well, thank you both for presenting that. So this is a time now where if any member of the audience who is watching us live is able to pose some questions, you can pop them into the comments either on LinkedIn or on YouTube, and we'll see them. But I have a few questions. I mean, the first one is just what kinds of projects, in addition to them being non-commercial, but what types of projects or I guess use cases or sectors or subject matters do you think are going to be maybe the first adopters, that the experience library in its early form, its early stages, is going to have the clearest value proposition?
I think it's should be or could be in the educational sector, but also so we have examples about history and teaching, learning examples. So this could be interesting, but we are open to any field of application. So non-commercial is key, I think.
Mm-hmm. I just add on to all of those comments there is that yes, XR4Human is not sort of domain specific. The idea is for us to generate sort of as wide standards as possible. But I think some of those areas are sort of Oliver alluded to, education and healthcare. These are sort of areas where we've perhaps had the biggest sort of adoption, or at least there's very, very strong use cases, and this is where people really want to push forwards. And I imagine that there's a critical mass there, and that's probably where we'll get most submissions from, I expect, in the beginning. But we are open and sort of very interested in sort of seeing use cases beyond that. So some of the edges is where most of the sort of creativity often sort of happens. So we're excited to sort of see what the community sort of brings to this. Michael, you're on mute, I think. Yeah.
Yes. So I was just having a conversation, maybe just yesterday, with a researcher in the cultural heritage space, talking about, and this is the common issue. You create something educational. There was a project, and it was for a museum or for an institution or for an event, and that event is completed. That program is finished, and then that experience kind of disappears. It just is in some place. And thinking, how much is time a factor? And I only ask because of time has an impact on sometimes accessibility to required hardware, what something was built for, if it was for an earlier version of a headset, or a headset that doesn't exist as much anymore. But definitely thinking that one need in the industry that I've heard about frequently is just a way to provide discoverability and access to projects that fulfilled their mandate, but still potentially hold value.
Yeah, that's a really interesting sort of topic of conversation. So it reminds me. So last week we were cleaning out our old laboratory. We just recently moved sort of facilities, and we have all of these old headsets now, which have absolutely no use whatsoever. And it really pains me to have to sort of get rid of them in some sort of we have to find a responsible way of doing that, of course. But yeah, there's so much of this sort of there's lots of software extinctions that is a very big sort of problem. And I think this is potentially a good usage, a good sort of visible way of having. So here's a project which had a lot of cool elements to it. Perhaps its time has come and gone now, and that project is not actively being developed. But there's a place where people can go and learn from that and say, okay, well, here's bits that worked in this previous application. Perhaps I can then take that forward in my own work. So yeah, that would be a fantastic outcome if that's how people wanted to use this repository. But I think it will be driven a lot by what the sort of community makes of it, how they sort of want to use this sort of platform. So it's that is, I think, a potentially really good use case. Yeah. It looks like we've got a question here as well from Nick. Thank you, Nick. Yeah, is it? I think maybe we can, Oliver and I can answer this one. Is it a free-to-use library for schools? So these experiences that people sort of submit should be freely accessible. So the idea is that you can download these if, of course, they are sort of live projects and working and so on. As long as you have the headsets, the sort of PC, perhaps whatever the sort of technical requirements are for that project, which will be listed very clearly on the sort of the website, then sure, you please go ahead. In fact, we'd actually encourage you to sort of come here to this sort of repository to make use of these sort of experiences if they fit your sort of your requirements. So yes, please, by all means, make use of it in that way.
And Oliver, did you? Sorry, I'll unmute you.
What we offer here is to either provide their direct links for downloading the experiences, or we offer the direct contact to the developers or the submittants of the experience. And for sure, the educational sector is an relevant and important sector, and I think many of those experiences are very well dedicated to the educational sector. So we strongly encourage you to approach the different developers of the various experiences, and that's the aim, to bring these experiences to the people. Yeah? And furthermore, we will not stop with the development of this experience library, we will also add some additional features in the future. We will add a rating system, which is also will also be developed in the project. And so this will allow the users to also identify the quality and the quality of the different contributions, the different experiences based on the rating system we developed in this project. And if there are comments from users, if there is information missing and so on, we are happy to further improve the website, the experience library, and add more content as desired. Yeah, we now started with a proposal for the search functionality, but if it turns out after some weeks that some aspects needs to be, we need to integrate some other filters, for example, to search for different properties of or features of applications, then we are more than happy to modify and extend and improve this experience library. So we're happy about any proposals and contributions.
And if I can ask just about the non-commercial element, right? Because that, I guess, some people will have questions about that. So in the context of the experience library, what does non-commercial mean? And I ask because some projects, you know, or maybe someone was paid to make it. It was a business for that person. Maybe they have the rights, or maybe whoever was the client institution has the rights to it. But is non-commercial for the purpose of the experience library? I'm understanding means it's non-commercial. Now it should be available for free if people want to try to access it. But that doesn't mean that it was made in a university student context or you know, an enthusiast context. Is that right?
Yeah, I think, Michael, that's absolutely spot on. So it's a case of how it's now being distributed rather than how it was created. So within the submission process itself, we ask for your sort of licensing sort of arrangements for the experience. So as long as as long as people are able to download and make use of that without having to sort of pay for this, then that would sort of be sufficient, I believe. I mean, perhaps Oliver's got more detail on this. Oliver, do you think that covers it?
Sorry, go ahead, Oliver.
I totally agree. So the key is that it should not be a paid application or paid experience. Yeah. But whoever wants to contribute with some project to the XR community, everybody is welcome. Yeah, so this must not necessarily be a public institution, a university, or an individual. It can also be companies which will share their projects for free to the XR community and to the wider public.
You know, and I'll ask just because I see one of our audience members is a Chaos Princess, who's a very well-known figure in the industry as a virtual world creator, going back many years. You know, in VR chat. Actually, I don't know about VR chat, but High Fidelity and, you know, Neos and Resonite now, and but it makes me think about the multi-user platforms, and again the rise of experiences, particularly I would say in the arts and culture space. The rise of virtual worlds that are inside of platforms that may be free, but they are platforms that have a business model separate of the virtual world. You know, and I guess not that anyone has answers now, but just thinking and, you know, maybe looking ahead or thinking about how to include an experience that is behind. It's behind another entity that may be accessible now, but.
Yeah, that's a really interesting sort of situation, Michael. What we are going to be doing, as sort of Oliver alluded to, is making changes as we go along. This is by far not, this is the sort of opening of this, but it's not the finished article. And I doubt it will ever be the finished article. We'll constantly keep on evolving this as the XR industry evolves. And so what we're asking for now are sort of submissions from the community, and perhaps our platform isn't fit for purpose to be able to incorporate those types of submissions now, but we'll take those and we'll sort of see and adapt where we can, and hopefully we can start to showcase as much of the XR community's work as possible. So if there are those particular sort of niches where we're not doing that, we're not accurately capturing that right now, we'll try and adapt accordingly. So what we can say, if you are in one of those situations where you think, oh, does my work fit, does it not, drop us an email or submit one of the sort of submission forms, and we'll evaluate it and discuss it within our sort of work package 6 sort of team. And then there's a submission advisory group as well who can discuss and work out. So yeah, don't let that stop you. We will adapt with you.
Michael, if I may answer a question by Nick. So this initiative is part of the XR4Human project, which is an European Horizon Europe project. And at least during the lifetime of the project, which is another 1.5 years, this experience library will be managed by the project. So our work package, which is led by Faisal and myself, is responsible for this experience library. And after the end of the project, we hand over this XR4Human experience library to XR4Europe. And XR4Europe will then continue these efforts and still make the applications and experiences available to the wider community. But so far, for the next 18 months, it's managed and hosted and monitored by the XR4Human Horizon Europe project.
And that leads maybe me to on the XR4Europe hat, just envisioning that future. After the project, what I would love to see, and I think it's a lot of work, but it's not unfeasible that we don't establish that if there are projects that come out of that are made with public funding, either from member states and regions or at a higher level, that they don't include an expectation that they are acceptable and suitable for the experience library going forward. That projects that are made with public funding, particularly in the not just in the cultural and heritage space, but in educational space, anything that's made with public funding should, one, be adhering to the codes of conduct and to the standards that XR4Human is helping to establish. And then as a natural consequence, it means the acceptability and inclusion in the experience library should be a target of those types of projects. That would be that dream going forward, is that it's both the place that it's the aspiration, but it's not just the aspiration. It's it's the expectation. If you're creating work with not just with public funds, but definitely with public funds, that you're suitable for this type of curation. Nick has another. So Nick is obviously very enthusiastic, and Nick, for those who aren't unfamiliar with him, is very much a leader in the Netherlands, in the Dutch XR space, in the field of education and XR. So he asks about. Nick, I don't know about the RTC Belgium now being for sale in the Netherlands. So this might be too specific. We might be able to follow up some of the questions in another dedicated forum. And actually, we have an XR4Human forum, which would be a good opportunity to bring up. The XR4Human forum is another project within the XR4Human project that is where we can have longer and continuous discussions around various topics, particularly topics related to the work packages. So in the XR4Human forum, which is accessible from the XR4Human website. And you just need to have an XR4Europe account. A free account is just required to access the forum to comment. Though you can see without registering, you can see the comments and the discussions. But if you have questions about the experience library, that is a place to be able to ask your questions and to engage with both the members of the project and other members of the XR community around those questions and topics. Yeah. All right. Well, then, is there any maybe final thoughts you'd like to? I mean, I think you guys said everything. You had the clear call to action. If you've got a project that is non-commercial and you are at least thinking it could be acceptable and appropriate for the experience library, then to reach out and submit. But is there anything else you guys want to wrap up today's session with, maybe less words?
Well, we strongly invite the community to submit experiences. We are really interested to receive your submissions, and we with the very first examples, we will test our internal review process. So we have to go through the submission form, all the entries, and we will also test first the application and in a small committee, and then we will decide if this experience will be included in this library. But if it's non-commercial application which supports education, development, history, whatever, then we are more than happy to receive your submissions, and we hope that in the next few weeks or months the library will increase, and perhaps we need to improve our search functionality to identify quickly the desired search result to find the best, most suitable application.
Yeah, just before we go, I want to just address the comments here coming in. Federico, excellent question about the rating system. So this is actually an ongoing piece of work right now. So we've so Michael mentioned at the outset that we've undertaken a Delphi study. We're actually in the final stages of that Delphi study now. And that Delphi study, so Delphi, if you're not familiar with this, is a way of gaining consensus amongst experts. So what we did in our first stage, which you saw some of the sort of data from that, is we looked at sort of what makes a good XR experience, what are the best practices amongst that. And then we asked people about two things. First, we asked them about the importance of various different sort of factors when you're designing XR, and then also about how realistic, how easy is it for you to actually be able to implement those various things. So you might think that one element is actually a very good thing to do, but in practice, it's extremely hard to sort of implement. And so from that, we're developing a sort of framework for best practices across various different themes. And from there, we will extract the sort of rating system. So how well are you addressing these different sort of criteria that have been defined by our expert consensus? So that will come. It will come in the sort of, I guess, for maybe in the next year or so. I don't want to put too much of a sort of tight timeline on this, but certainly before the end of this sort of project, the rating system will be integrated into the experience library. And of course, we'll disclose openness and transparency sort of keys to our sort of project. We'll discuss how that's been developed and how you would sort of hit those various different sort of criteria when that is launched. So hopefully that answers your question, and thank you.
I mean, yeah, that's a fun topic to end on, because it begs another session focusing just on the rating system. And that's you know, it's everyone understands it's great to have a wonderful library full of great content, but the idea of attributing some type of assessments consistently across wide ranges of, you know, diverse use cases and things, yeah, that's a rich topic. So maybe that we'll follow that up. We'll follow this up with another session a little later on in the project when that's
yeah, absolutely. I think Yeah, when we launch that rating system, I think, yeah, coming back here and explaining that development process, yeah, that would be very happy to sort of do that. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, and I'll take one more moment to plug the XR4Human forum. If you have thoughts and suggestions at the earliest stages about rating systems, that is definitely a forum in which you can begin to share your thoughts and your suggestions there, and they will be read and they will be discussed for sure. That's what the forum's purpose is. So on that note, I'd like to thank Oliver and Faisal again for sharing your times with us today and demonstrating the XR4Human Experience Library. And again, thank you for everyone who watched us live. And especially thanks in advance for anyone who saw this and said, I got to go right now to XR4Human.eu, go to the Experience Library and start filling out my submission form. So I hope we see a lot of really good projects very soon.
Mm-hmm. Thank you all for joining us. And thank you, Michael.
Yes, thank you very much. Thanks, Michael. Bye-bye.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Bye all. Bye.